Alright, welcome to screencast number 2 for Unit 8, Lesson 4. And I am on page 474, and we're going to talk about station models. Alright, a station model is a set of meteorological symbols that represent the weather at a particular observing station at a particular time. Okay? They're often shown on weather maps. Now, you don't typically see them on the weather maps that they'll show you on the news or things like that, but these are depicted on the weather maps, for instance, that the meteorologists are going to use to help make some weather predictions. All right, so let's talk about what a station model is and how to interpret a station model. Okay, this particular sheet of paper is something that I gave you guys at the beginning of the year that I asked you to put in your keeper section of your binder, and you haven't really used it, but now we're going to start using it. Okay, this is a sort of a how-to and a description of what you're going to see on a station model. All right, we start out with a circle, and the circle goes on the map on the location that the information is coming from. So, for instance, if the information is coming out of Giddings, Texas, then there's going to be a little circle that is going to be put on the map on Giddings, Texas. So that's the first part. The second part is, what do we do with the circle? Do we leave it clear or do we color it in? And what we're going to do is we are going to shade the circle based on how much cloud cover is present at that time. Okay, how much we color in that circle is going to depend on cloud coverage, and on page 474 there are some options. You leave it completely uncolored if the sky is clear, and then you have several different options for how cloudy the sky is, all the way to overcast when you would color it in completely. I wouldn't worry too much about this sky obscured. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is we need to look at the station model, and we need to talk about wind speed and wind direction. Okay? So, wind speed and wind direction. Wind direction is going to be indicated by a bar, a stick, whatever you want to call it, and it is going to be oriented so that it points into the wind. So, for instance, in this particular instance, it's pointing down towards the southwest, so that indicates that the wind is coming from the southwest. Okay? So the stick is going to be put somewhere around the circle depending on where the wind speed and wind direction is, where the wind is coming from. Okay? On the end of the stick are going to be some, they call them feathers, flags, whatever. If it is a full feather, that's 10 knots, which a nautical mile is not equal to a normal statute mile, but it's not super, super, super far off. So we're just going to not worry about the difference for this class. So that would be 10 knots. A half feather is 5 knots. So if you see a full and a half, that's 15 knots. That tells you your wind speed. So where the bar is tells you your wind direction, and the little feathers on the bar tell you your wind speed. Okay, you have the different options here on page 474 to help you. All right, and then there are several other things around the circle that are put in designated spots to give you some additional information. For instance, temperature is always put in the upper left-hand corner of the station model. The dew point is put in the lower left-hand corner. In this particular illustration, they have the temperature given in Celsius, but most of the time our station models are going to have the temperature given in Fahrenheit. Okay, so here is your air temperature, here's your dew point. Okay, let me zoom this out. Okay, some other important things that are going to be indicated on the station model. In the upper right-hand corner is where barometric pressure is put. Lower right-hand corner, a lot of times this is missing, but if you have information about precipitation in the last 6 hours, you'll put it there. And between the two will be your barometric trend. Well, what that means is it's going to give you an idea of, has the barometric pressure been rising or falling or staying about the same? Okay. All right, so at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a couple of examples and see if we can make some sense of them. All right, I am on weather.gov, which is the website that the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration publishes all of the weather data and things on. And I'm going to go right here where it says Forecast Maps. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to look at a surface analysis. And I'm going to zoom that out. And I'm going to go to High Resolution Surface Analysis. So it'll give me the current surface analysis. Okay. All right, so I have a map of the United States, and it's got all of these station models all over the place, and it looks like a jumbled up mess. This is not the kind of map that they show the general public, and you can probably see why, because it would be something that's very hard for people to understand in general what's going on. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to zoom this in. We're going to look at a couple of stations in Texas. And let's see, zoom it in a little bit more. All right. I'm going to start with this one up here. Okay, this is up in the Panhandle. That might be, I don't know, Pampa, I think that's maybe Dalhart. But anyway, it's somewhere in the Panhandle. First of all, the circle indicates where it's located. It is completely filled in, which tells you that the skies are overcast. Here is the bar indicating wind speed. It points into the wind, so the wind is coming from the southeast at about 5 knots, because there's only a little half feather right there. Okay, this 187 is going to be our pressure reading. 56 is... Okay, 56 is our air temperature, so it's 56 degrees Fahrenheit. 51 is our dew point. And then I have 3 little circles right here, and I need to figure out what those are. Okay, on the back of this sheet, there is a bunch more information. Okay, it says weather station symbols, and we've got all sorts of stuff. We have the cloud coverage information, the wind speed information, what your fronts look like, your wind directions, all sorts of stuff. Here is where I want us to look for right now. If you look, 3 little dots kind of in a triangle mean that we are having a moderate rainstorm. Okay? So up here, they're having rain. These guys are having rain too, but not quite as much. Okay, not quite as heavy rain. All right, let's look at that 187. That is our pressure reading, and I'm going to explain to you what to do with that pressure reading. All right, so the pressure reading from our station model that we were just looking at is 187. But let's go through and figure out what to do with this number. Up here in the example is 196, which stands for a barometric pressure reading of 1019.6. Okay, the first thing that you need to do the first thing that I'm going to do with the 196 is I'm going to put the decimal back in it. Okay? And then the second thing I need to do is I need to decide whether I am going to put a 9 in front of this number or whether I'm going to put a 10 in front of this number. Okay? If I put a 9, it's going to turn into 919.6. If I put a 10, it's going to turn into 1019.6. Now, you're probably thinking, I have no idea how to decide which one. I have no idea what you're doing. Okay, so I want to stop and I want to go to page 475 and I want you to write something down on page 475 that is going to help you. Okay, first thing that you need to understand is that normal air pressure at sea level is approximately 1,013 millibars. Normally you hear of barometric pressure being given in inches of mercury, like 29.98 inches of mercury or 30.14 inches of mercury. But on the station models, we are going to record atmospheric pressure in millibars. It's just a different unit. Okay. Now, normal atmospheric pressure in millibars typically falls in this range, okay, somewhere between 950 and 1050 or 950 and 1049. The only thing that I can think of that's going to get you out of that range is if you are dealing with a hurricane or something crazy like that. Okay, so your normal pressure is somewhere between these two numbers. All right. After you have recorded this, okay, make sure that you've recorded that, and then let's go back to our two numbers that we were having to decide on. Okay? Remember, we started with just 196. Put the decimal in, and we got 19.6, and then I have to decide, do I add a 9 or do I add a 10? Well, when I add a 9, my pressure reading is outside of that range. When I put a 10, my pressure reading is in that range. So I know that this is the pressure reading that I need to use right here. Okay? Okay, the pressure reading at the station we were looking at is right here. It's 187. So in order for me to make sense of that, I'm going to follow the same steps. First, I'm going to take my 187 and I am going to put my decimal in it, and that becomes 18.7. Then I need to decide, should I put a 9 in front of it or should I put a 10 in front of it? Okay. If I put a 9 in front of it, it's too low, it falls out of that range. So I know that it should have a 10 in front of it. So my pressure at that particular station that we were looking at was 1,018.7 millibars. Okay, the next thing that we're going to look at, and it's a good thing all of this stuff is color-coded because even with the symbols it's still kind of jumbled together. This station model, the 187 goes with it, the 56, these little 3 pink dots, the 51, and this right here in kind of that goldish brownish color is the barometric trend. There is a little down and then a flat part, and it says -17 beside it. All right, so we go to the weather station symbols. That's the sheet that I've asked you to keep. Okay, it was falling and then steady. So down and then flat. So the reading was falling and then it's been steady, and it has fallen a total of 17 millibars. Okay? Or that may be 1.7. I've got to double check that. But anyway, this is your barometric trend. Okay? Yeah, sorry. The barometric trend here is not 17, it's 1.7 because you have to put the decimal in that barometric reading as well. So, okay, that should be it on station models. And number 16 on page 474 asks you to draw your own station model with the certain characteristics. So make sure that you go back and do that.